Yes, good evening and welcome to this licensing committee meeting on 25th of June at 7 p.m. Just a reminder that this meeting is webcast on the Council YouTube channel. So just so that you are aware. So I'll go through the formalities and I'll start by taking apologies for absence. Is there any apology for absence? Markesha, have you received any apology for absence?
I haven't, no.
Okay, thank you. I haven't got any urgent matters to discuss, so we'll move on to the declaration of interest. Is there anyone who needs to declare any interest? No. Okay, then I have no matters to be considered in private. So we'll move to the minutes of the previous meeting. So can we agree the minutes of the previous meeting, please?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed.
Agreed. Yes,
Thank
please.
you. Thank you. Are there any matters arising from those minutes? No. Okay, in that case, we move to the main agenda item, and that is the license hearing update report and temporary event notices. Let me just see this message from Gareth. Technical issue getting in. Will join it. So Councillor Shaw is having some IT issues, so he will join in shortly. So we'll go to Joe. Joe, you can start your report, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So I've brought two items today in one report, just for ultimate efficiency. The two items are the licensing decisions update and a review of temporary event notices. So I'll quickly run through the licensing decisions update. All of this information is in the report, but I've just prepared this short presentation to run through them and invite any questions or scrutiny. In terms of licensing decisions, we're taking it from the beginning of the financial year. So, of course, a couple of months in, there haven't been a load of matters come in front of committee yet, but up to when this was written, which I believe was the 16th of June, the committee had made 5 decisions. They were in relation to 3 new premises licenses. 1 was granted and 2 were refused. And the other 2 matters were reviews of premises licenses, and in one case the premises license had additional conditions imposed by the committee, and in the other case that license was revoked. So these are the premises that were decided upon. So yeah, I have to admit there isn't a great deal to read into this yet, but as the year goes on and the committee can kind of review the overall amount of applications which are refused or granted, etc., the saying goes that the more varied and diverse the decisions are, the more it shows that the council takes each decision on a case-by-case basis, which is entirely in accordance with the Licensing Act and our licensing policy. I'll just pause there if there are any questions about these decisions, Chair, if that's all right.
Yeah. Any questions, colleagues? No, I don't see any hand. So just a question. So obviously these are not all the applications. These are just the applications that came to the subcommittee.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, just by way of reminder, a number of applications will have been made, will have been consulted upon in the usual way. So notices displayed around the premises, a notice in the paper, and of course on our web pages, they will have been publicised for at least 28 days. If no representation is received, then the licence is granted as applied for. In some cases, a representation might be made, for example, by the police, and the person that's made the representation and the applicant may discuss and kind of negotiate matters to deal with their concerns, which we refer to that process as mediation. So, for example, the police may say, we would like a condition in relation to CCTV that's more specific around the quality of the footage and how long it's retained for, then if the applicant agrees to have that condition on their licence, that will be added to the licence. The police may withdraw their representation, and then that matter would get decided. Sometimes the committee will be aware of situations that have gone right up to when the hearing is due to happen, and then parties withdraw their representation. And that's I mean, it's unfortunate in terms of kind of expecting to have a hearing tomorrow, but then it doesn't go ahead. But what that often indicates is that there's been quite furious negotiation behind the scenes, so that those that have made representations, both responsible authorities and applicants, have reached an agreement whereby you know, the people making representations have been satisfied, the licensing objectives have been complied with. So there will be a lot of applications that don't go through the committee, and that's done under effectively delegated authority. So to the assistant director, where representations aren't received, that will go through without the committee making a decision. I can see Councillor Moffat has a question, which I'm happy to answer.
Before I go to Councillor Moffat, I've got another question. Now, on all these 5 decisions, was any of them challenged through an appeal?
No, we've not received any appeals yet, as far as I'm aware. So the other thing to raise is when an application, for example, appeals are most commonly happen when a license has been revoked. Because if you have a license and then you know, through a review process, the committee decide to revoke it, you have, it's either 21 or 28 days. You'll forgive me, there's so many appeal periods I deal with, it's one or the other. And if you make an appeal, then that decision is effectively held until the appeal is determined, which is at Magistrates Court. And with the delays in the justice system at the moment, these appeals can take up to 12 months to go in front of the magistrates. So then, although the committee have said this license has been revoked, you actually are able to use the license for a further 12 months until the magistrates make their decision. And it's not, I don't want to cast aspersions, but unscrupulous operators may then just withdraw their appeal the day before we're due to go into Magistrates Court, just because they've been able to engage in a further 12 months worth of trading. Although, to be clear, our legal department are very will pursue that matter to pay our costs, because obviously right up until that point we've actually engaged quite a lot of legal advice and incurred quite a lot of costs, so they don't get off scot-free if that happens.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Moffat, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Joe, for the report, which is very useful. Thank you for that. My question is a bit broader, and I wonder whether you believe that the kind of licensing regime as we operate it in Ealing is broadly supportive of businesses, whether it encourages them to thrive, or whether it's sort of the way in which we operate it might be described as unduly burdensome.
That is a very broad question, Councillor Moffat, so I'll do my best to answer. You'll appreciate as well that my kind of area is a regulatory area, so I'm not perhaps a colleague from economic development and regeneration, who are a lot more over things like jobs and skills and employment. But I would say that the new licensing policy that will be hopefully adopted at full council in due course, that has been developed subsequent to the after 6 PM strategy that was developed by colleagues in regeneration. And during the consultation phases, it was very interesting that we got a kind of even split with consultees about those that thought the draft policy was too permissive, and others who thought the draft policy was too restrictive. I actually think in my view, the licensing policy I think is pitched correctly. I think if you are, for example, wanting to run a late night alcohol-led venue, then you are able to do that under the licensing policy, even in a special policy area, even outside of our recognised core hours. The caveat to that is that as long as you can demonstrate that you will appropriately manage any potential negative impacts and promote the licensing objectives. So an experienced, competent operator with a decent, comprehensive application and operating schedule and a good history of running such venues, there's no reason why they wouldn't be able to get quite an extensive license. And with regards to the special policy area, there is a rebuttable presumption that further alcohol licenses would not be granted. And we went through over the past 12 months things like our cumulative impact assessment, looking at where there are particularly dense areas of alcohol license premises and crime. But it's a rebuttable presumption. It can still be that the committee still are able to use a policy which they can consider things like cultural value and things like that. And arguably that's why the licensing framework is set up the way that it is, so that if representations are made, then it goes in front of the committee, who are a quasi-judicial body who can weigh things up beyond simply officers in my department who deal with licensing compliance, beyond police licensing, the risk of crime and disorder, health and safety, noise, etc. And they can weigh up other things such as the community value, the economy, and so on. So yeah, the committee's role is to apply the licensing policy to take into account those things, and our licensing policy is in depth enough and in accordance with the after 6 p.m. strategy that I think the committee can bring in all of those things together with the kind of democratic mandate and accountability that perhaps officers don't have, which is why it's a councillor-led matter. If there's representations, if it's not controversial, it goes through. So yeah, I feel like I've danced around your question a little bit, but hopefully I've given some insight.
And I'm very grateful. Thank you very much.
No, you have answered, but I would like to add to that, Councillor Moffat, that straightforward, the answer to your question, yes, Ealing licensing policy is very supportive. However, we want the responsible operators to come with a proper plan so that we can be assured that there'll be no harm to the residents and there's no compromise on that. Also, we don't want some of the operators who are illegally working to take advantage and give disadvantage to those who abide by rules. So this is the thing that we really take seriously. But if the applicant comes with a proper plan, definitely Ealing licensing will grant a license. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you. Councillor Glant, you have a question, I think.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I just ask, am I allowed to refer to a particular case that's actually on the list that's up there at the moment, or, I mean, it's been and gone? Can I refer to it? Is that all right?
My suggestion would be to not refer to any particular one,
all right.
Unless
okay.
Joe has a different view on that.
Okay.
My view would be that you stick to just a general question. What do you say, Joe?
I would align with whatever you say, Chair. But yeah, I think it like lots of my answers, it depends, Councillor Gallant. So yeah.
Okay, well, I'll make it very general then. So the thing is that a license is a very good thing. Sometimes premises are unlicensed and operating because they don't need a license and causing a lot of trouble. When they get the license, they become so much more accountable and so much more useful. And that's the license is the thing that generates the improvements they're going to make to the premises, the behaviours, the security, the management of the minutiae, like how many people are going to be allowed to smoke outside the premises and so on. So this is where the licensing regime actually promotes good activity, and then more people use it correctly, and it's promoting good business. So there's no reason why the licensing regime can't support the economy of Ealing, and particularly in the nighttime economy. That's the way I feel about it. That's my experience of it. And I just wanted to very quickly touch on appeals, because when I first started doing this, and I feel like I'm not exactly a veteran, but I've been doing it for a while, it was quite common that there was a sort of climate of threat that if you revoke it, we'll appeal it, and it'll be 12 months down the line before before anything happens, and we'll be able to operate more or less as we are now, and tough. And I've noticed that that's stopped now a little bit. I haven't heard any of that kind of talk at licensing committee meetings. So I think that's quite positive. And there are relatively few appeals as well. So that's quite a positive development. And that's probably because people are engaging more in discussion before meetings, and there are more intelligent conversations happening before it ever gets to the committee.
Thank you.
So that's an interjection, not a question. Sorry.
Any comments on that, Joe, or shall we just move on?
No, they're both very true observations. Both the less decisions are less frequently appealed, which could indicate that they are more robust decisions than happened before. I think also, and this kind of links in with what you were saying, Councillor Ahmed. One of the things that I slightly overlooked in some of my answers is, of course, a good licensing system in the borough relies on potentially rogue operators knowing that they will face enforcement action and so on. And I think over the past 2 years, post-COVID, the officers have really done a great job in doing a kind of full spectrum approach to enforcement, because as Councillor Gallant says, our desire is to bring businesses into the regulatory framework. We often use the word regularization, like, yeah, come and apply, and there are conditions that you have to follow and so on, but come into the system. Otherwise, for example, unauthorized alcohol sales we treat extremely seriously, and we do that because if we don't, we undermine the system for those that are following the rules that are within there. So yeah, the enforcement activity has made a significant difference, and we're not only reviewing licenses, we're also pursuing prosecutions as well. So you will see, you will probably read in the local papers about matters and think, I remember hearing this at a license review application a few months ago, and it's only because prosecutions take that much longer to come through that we're then following up with a prosecution. If there's been an underage sale and the premises is licensed, or counterfeit alcohol or cigarettes, etc. So yeah, we're taking a bit of more of a full spectrum response to enforcement, and because we have officers available, that early kind of contact before I'm thinking of making an application, what kind of things should I look at, that conversation is invaluable and a significant return on investment. So yeah, I agree with both those observations.
Thank you. Councillor Shaw, are you in the meeting? Have you managed to log in?
Yes, I am here. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I was going to pass on your apologies. So
yes.
Good to know
Thank
that
you very
you are
much.
in.
I appreciate it. Sorry about the technical issues. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Councillor Ball, you've got a question or comment, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was just asking, I noticed in the report that only 17% of the TENs that were submitted were for premises that aren't licensed or in the process of getting subsequently licensed. I wondered if we had any intelligence about whether we think there are whether all the kind of one-off events in the borough that should require TENs are applying for them, or whether that low proportion might indicate that there are some events slipping under the radar.
I'll talk about, I was going to get to TENs a bit later on after this.
Sorry.
No, but that's all right. I can, let me write that down and I'll remember that question. I'll answer that as I go, if that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else want to ask any question, or shall we move to the next part?
If
Okay.
if I may, Chair, sorry, I can't put
Yes,
my hand
please.
up. Yes.
Yes, please.
Yes, I'd just like to thank the officers, obviously, for the report and what's gone on. It's really helpful. We have had quite a lot of refusals recently, and some of them have been within special policy areas, you know, which by default there's an assumption to refuse. However, you know, I would say that some of the discussion the panel have had, certainly that I've been involved in, has sort of raised the issue of to what level people need to be to actually get an application passed within a special policy area, and it seems a little bit of a grey area, to be honest. Just it's a little bit unclear just as to, you know, they need to go above and beyond what's expected, and where the panel should actually draw the line of, yes, this is actually a very strong application. And again, sort of some of the legal advice as well has sort of suggested, well, they've met everything that they can do, and actually perhaps if they appealed, then they may be able to sort of appeal on some grounds that they've done everything they can, but still can't get the license because of the special policy area. So I was just wondering if you could sort of make a couple of comments around that for people, just so they understand on panels just where they need to be sort of guided and how they need to be leaning.
Yes, Joe, is that clear? What
Yeah,
the show is asking.
It's a
That's
little.
all right.
I understand it's a little bit of an awkward one here, and
Yeah.
there's a very fine line that we need to balance, of course.
No, it is very important because the general perception of the applicants is that the application will be refused if they applied. Now we do tell them that yes, if you come with a good application with a proper plan, then yes, you'll go. But it's very unlikely, and it's most of the time they are refused. So that is the question Councillor Shaw is asking. Over to you, Joe.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, I probably made a few faces when you're asking that question because it was just my brain whirring, because we are slightly straying into a bit of a legal question, I think, because the legal advisor's role, one of them is to advise the committee on how likely an appeal would be to be successful should it be made. But the special policy areas, I think, to go back to first principles, they're born out of our assessment of the cumulative impact of having denser areas of alcohol sales and the cumulative impact with respect to local ambulance alcohol related calls, crime and disorder, antisocial behaviour and other matters. And so really what the special policy areas call for is for applicants to recognise that where they are operating is in an area of heightened risk of leading to negative impacts. So things which go before the committee, things like what are their policy, like that are very much related to what the cumulative impact matters are. So for example, refusals policies, challenge 25, proper thorough comprehensive training for staff. So it's an off license in an area that's not a special policy area. Their application might be at this low level. Apologies, I'm putting my hands down for people that can't see. And then if it was in a special policy area, the application would be that significantly more robust to cover those areas. That's probably as close as I can come to answering that question. It may be something, Chair, that we think about for possible committee training in future, like in a more closed shop setting. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Chair. Thank you. I think that would be helpful, and perhaps we could have sort of a more general discussion just around it. You know, I mean, that said, you know, I would like to make it clear that I am very much in favour of the special policy areas, and what they do and what it means for the licensing subcommittees and the panels to be able to sort of make their judgment. I do think it's important that they're in place and that we keep them.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Buckley, you've got a question, I think.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Joe, for this very helpful report. My question is about additional imposed conditions, and I just wanted to see if you could give us a bit of more information of what it means in practice and how the team at your end would be kind of managing the conditions with the premises. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, the license conditions can be really important because they set the standard at which the license holder has to operate, and a breach of a license condition is an offence, and it's grounds for reviewing the license and other actions. So one of the things in our new policy and in our old policy is we have example management conditions that applicants could volunteer or the committee could refer to as conditions to be adopted, because the other thing that we sometimes come across is very historic premises licenses. So like going back years and years, when the 2003 Act came in, the Magistrates Court used to deal with licenses, and no disrespect to magistrates, I think there's a few JPs on the call anyway, but they didn't always carry with them they didn't carry with them conditions which were easy to enforce. So the enforcement has to be enforceable. It has to be a really distinct, is this compliant or isn't this? So the more modern conditions are generally easier. Some of the older ones are a bit more difficult. The other thing we sometimes do with premises is we actually ask them if there are challenges associated with that premises and maybe potential undermining of the licensing objectives. Officers will sometimes ask the license holder to voluntarily adopt license conditions via what's called a minor variation process, which happens without committee involvement. So they will apply maybe for, and we've had it before where maybe people have voluntarily added a condition to their license about selling lower ABV, alcohol by volume drinks, or the committee may be aware of the Ask Angela scheme, which is if you are on a night out and you're feeling threatened, you can say to someone behind the bar, I'd like to ask for Angela, and that's effectively a code word for them for you to say, I don't feel very safe, I'd like someone to basically get me home safely. So what we were doing was encouraging premises to adopt those conditions, to adopt that as a condition, that their staff would receive training, they will display posters, and they will participate in the scheme. So yeah, conditions are really important for us, and for the committee it gives you that assurance that you are setting the standard for how the premises should operate. So yeah, it's a serious business, and it's your way as committee members of securing the future of that premises.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Dheer, you've got a question.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Chair, thanks to Joe for his report. And earlier on, we noted and agreed that we need to strike a balanced pitch in terms of promoting businesses in our borough, as well as looking and safeguarding the interests of the neighborhoods and residents. And that's the right thing to do. And that's really is the aim of our policy. But when it comes to special policy areas, and Southall is a special policy area, and in my experience on the panels, I have been disappointed by some of the businesses who come before our panels. Their almost complete lack of knowledge and any intention to promote our licensing objectives. So I think that when it comes to special policy areas, which should really be a little more attuned to the protection of the neighborhoods and their peace. I mean, Joe said that in such cases there is a rebuttable presumption to refuse, and I think we should use that. The onus in such cases must be on the applicant to prove that they are worthy businesses who can be trusted to promote our licensing objectives in a special policy area. So I think I would certainly want this to be included in our committee training, that we have that rigorous approach in regard to those businesses who do not show any interest or inclination to safeguard the objectives of our policy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Joe, you want to comment on that?
No, I concur. I don't have any comments. I agree.
Well, the comments I would make is that our new policy does have a section where the applicants will get more guidance. And as I always said, we do ask applicants to come with a good plan, understand the licensing objectives, and then make the application. If they come with the full plan, then I think they are very likely to get the license. But if they're not prepared, if they don't have the knowledge, then obviously the answer would be no in a special policy area. So thank you, Councillor Dheer. I've got Councillor Kim Nagpal.
Thank you, Chair. My question is on the back of Gareth's question. Are we refusing disproportionately more applications in the last, say, I know you've only got 3 months data in front of you now, but say in the last 6 months or so, per your memory, than we do usually? Thanks.
I don't believe so, but that might be something, Councillor Nagpal, that we consider at a future committee. One of the subjects that might be relevant actually is for us maybe to, if the new policy comes in July 2025, is to do maybe at the end of this financial year a bit of a comparison between pre-new policy and post-old one, just because obviously you need quite a long stretch of time to get a spread of data, because you will get odd situations occur that can easily, you know, a couple of odd applications that come in that were refused can start to skew the data. But I don't think there have been more refusals. I don't think refusal has been more common. It may well happen though, because as said earlier in the conversation, my observation of the officers' liaison with operators, and also operators being smart, is that there is a lot more pre-application discussion than before, so that there is less likely for things to come in, like applications that might be refused, to come in front of the committee, because officers will be clearer about what will attract representations. And also, yeah, and there are other things, like, you know, we've been on YouTube since COVID, so now if you want to see how a licensing committee goes, you just Google Ealing Council Licensing Committee, and you can watch a full committee session. So if you're proposing to go ahead, you can see what it's like. So yeah, so sorry, I've gone a long way about saying I'm not sure, but I don't think there have been more refusals.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I'm just looking at the table of decisions, and I was wondering whether another column would be helpful, where it shows whether it's a special policy area or not, where the decisions are. It might give a more of kind of indication on the refusals. Just a thought.
I shall do that, because actually that's it can be difficult to capture, because I'm bringing one of the things with the temporary event notice section after I'll do after this is it will be difficult to do that retrospectively because of the way some of our geographic information systems work. So if I start denoting that now, yeah, I shall do that. I'll take that away, Councillor. So
thank you. Thank you. Councillor Mahmood, you've got a question or comment.
Thank you, Chair. And Joe, you emphasize a couple of times in this meeting of cumulative effect on the special policy area. And you mentioned in the last meeting as well, an Ealing hospital record is showing the same thing in terms of alcohol-related admission. The Ealing Council is one of the highest in terms of alcohol-related admission is that. So I'm just wondering, not about the only special policy area, but is it your remit and your team is working behind to reduce that rate, or is there any other team, or is there anyone is working on the background or not?
Yeah, yes. So there is. We are now going into the realms of public health and the health and well-being strategy. So the incidence of alcohol-related disease within communities in the borough and disproportionately some communities rather than others, I'm aware that is being assessed and evaluated and monitored by public health colleagues, but we're going to stray out of my depth because it's the kind of level of consultants in public health that would be able to speak to this. I can't. I'm just aware that they are aware of it, because there's also there's not always a direct link between alcohol-related disease and the prevalence of sale of alcohol in a certain area. So that alcohol-related disease, that wasn't the primary. That wasn't kind of the primary link. The primary link we made for the purposes of cumulative impact, or that was evidenced, was London Ambulance Service visits that were alcohol related. So the people had drunk alcohol at that time, because of course people might, they might go across the road. They might go across the road to Hounslow to purchase alcohol and then bring it into this area. So yeah.
So, Chair, so when we will be making decision in licensing committee, we should not be afraid of those numbers. So, like you said, it is not always related. The more of licenses is related to the higher admission rate.
If I may interject, the purpose of special policy areas and for the committee having them at their disposal is that we have done the cumulative impact assessment, which is a statutory mechanism that's recognised in the Licensing Act. And that has come up with our special policy areas, which have been adopted in licensing policy. So the purpose of that is that you as a committee don't need to justify each time you make a decision why you are looking for an enhanced application in that area. That work has been done for you. If an applicant wishes to argue about the location of a special policy area or where the boundary is, well, that argument has passed. The chance to change the special policy areas won't exist again until 2030, when we'll go through the statutory consultation. So the purpose of the special policy area, Councillor, is so that you don't have to justify why the special policy area exists. You could just say it is in a special policy area, and for this reason, we're applying this rebuttable presumption.
Good, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe. I don't have any other indication, so if you can move on to your next stage, please.
Sure, thank you. So the second item tonight is about temporary event notices. So following some feedback, we reflected on the fact that there was some interesting data that had come out of the number of temporary event notices that we've seen. So at the committee's request, I've just provided a quick introduction of the general provisions and what challenges it represents to the committee, and then a bit of a dive into what temporary event notices look like in Ealing and what they looked like last financial year. So just as a reminder for the committee, temporary event notices are essentially a way for people to apply to have licensable activities. They don't need to have a premises license. The application fee is cheaper than a full premises license. The only caveat to that is the event must be less than 500 people, so 499, including staff. They can't last more than 7 days, and anyone can apply for a 10 as long as they're 18 or over. There are limits on the number of 10s that different people can apply for. 10s have to be submitted at least 10 clear working days before the event. There is a process for late 10s, and these are ones which can be submitted right up to 5 clear working days before the event. With temporary event notices, there is no requirement for publication, and the only consultation that occurs is between the police and the Environmental Health Department. So on the basis of crime and disorder objective, protection of children from harm, nuisance and public safety. And they are the only bodies that can object. No other agencies or members of the public are able to object. If there are no objections received, then the event is authorised automatically, so commonly known as tacit consent. Late 10s, which are objected to, they're invalidated immediately. There are no grounds for appeal. But if it's a standard 10, then if an objection has been made, that 10 has to be decided by a licensing subcommittee, and at least 24 hours before the event. And the committee can allow the event to go ahead, impose conditions if the premises has an existing license, or issue a counter notice to prevent the event. So that's kind of the general provisions. In terms of the practical considerations, the 10s are most commonly associated with small scale events like community events, private parties, etc. And also it's important to remember that 10s are only in relation to licensable activities. So it's not just if you hold an event where there's no regulated entertainment and no alcohol and no food after 11 p.m, then you don't need a temporary event notice. It's only to authorise you to carry out licensable activities. For events which will involve more than 499 people, then premises will need to get a premises licence, and the committee may have seen premises license come forward which are for either a one-off event but it's just involving 500 or more people, or for the same event every year at the same time. And we do have a number of areas in the borough where actually, for example, parks, where the council is the premises license holder, and then we effectively allow organisations to use our premises license to carry out licensable activities, and that's something which happens under the events umbrella, which some of you may be aware of. There are challenges, particularly around the timelines. So I've tried to represent it as best I could, but the top line is basically if you want to hold an event on a Saturday, you must submit your 10 notice, your temporary event notice, by the preceding Thursday, because it's clear working days that are required. And then authorities have got up to 3 working days to make an objection. And this is how it would work. And then the hearing has to be held at least 24 hours before the event. So you will find that there may be slight rush if we have this happen for requests for councillors to form a committee. There's no requirement for consultation and no publicity requirements, except the 10 has to be on display at the event if it's authorised. That obviously can generate consternation with communities if an event isn't publicised, and so you know, if it does cause nuisance or something else, then that can generate frustration amongst local communities or people who are negatively impacted. So those are the main challenges we experience. Before I go into looking at the trends in Ealing, shall I stop for questions, Councillor Ahmed, because there are a couple.
If you think this is the time you need the question, we can go to the questions. I've got Councillor Sharma first, who wants to ask a question. Councillor Sharma.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Joe. I just wanted to ask, have the police or environmental health objected to a 10 in the past, and on what grounds? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, they have. Last year the council, I think I've got the data a bit later, but the council issued 6 counter notices. So that was where the police or environmental health have objected. Normally, most commonly, environmental health objections are related to noise, the potential impact for noise, and police ones are related to crime and disorder. So if they feel that there's not going to be enough security or protection at the event.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Anand. Praveen. Councillor Anand, can you unmute yourself? Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. A very good presentation, both of them actually. I just want to highlight one issue, and is that quite common, where we actually have certain premises that actually use the tents as a bypass for actually avoiding the full application. Do we actually does that actually happen quite often, where organization, I think you can have 10, is it 10 tens in a year, and then another, how many is that? I'm not sure, but they get past that license regulation. Is that common?
Yeah, sorry, did you have further?
That's it. Yeah. That's
okay.
It.
Yeah, I would actually come at it perhaps from the other end and say that some operators or venues actually use it as a way to demonstrate that they can run safely. So they apply for a 10 because they haven't yet got a premises license, to demonstrate that they can operate licensable activities in a way that doesn't undermine the licensing objectives. But yeah, there are limits on the number of 10s, and officers and the processing team do closely monitor the cumulative amount of hours and days and number of notices submitted to make sure that those aren't breached. So yeah, so we do actually sometimes officers will encourage someone thinking about running a licensable activity to try with a 10, because that, you know, it's a one-off event, it's a one-off matter. So if there are problems, it's not like it's like a premises license that once granted is in existence until it's revoked. And also it's effectively like a run through without commitment that premises or venue will always be able to do that licensable activity.
Thank you. Councillor Deer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Joe, did you say that 10's regulations apply to private parties, so that if you have, say, a birthday party, family social, or a wedding social at home, and you have 20, 30, 40 guests, that you have to apply for a 10's event license?
No, you wouldn't, because that wouldn't constitute licensable activities. So you're not doing retail of sale, you're not late night refreshment. There's not an undertaking going on. There's not a sale or a retail sale. So no. Otherwise, we'd be issuing, well, in Ealing, with the number of parties our residents have, we'd have thousands and tens of thousands of 10. So no, we don't do that. It's only for licensable activities.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a very good question, Councillor Deer, and you can answer to some of the residents who do ask these questions. Thank you for that. Councillor Mahmood.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah,
this is exactly, I wanted to clarify that, Joe, as you said, the police and environmental health will involve and will be consulted when the TAN will be happening. So there is no role of local community and there is no mechanism to involve them. Or do you think this is a good practice for organizer to inform the local residents that event is going to happen? And I've got second question.
Sure. We would encourage event organisers to let neighbours know what's happening. Perhaps provide a phone number if people have any issues. But it can be a ticklish business, can't it? So things like many people drive everywhere, so parking and so on. Parking is not really a consideration of the kind of licensing act and so on, but people get aggrieved at that. So I would encourage any event organizer to think these things through ahead of time and obviously significant events need to have that there's other legislation which applies, the Health and Safety at Work Act, event safety, security, etc.
I would like to add to what Joe said. By consulting the residents, the applicant has already done some of the work for police and environment services, because by doing that, there may not be, some issue may be resolved for police and they may not object it. So it is a kind of additional bonus for the applicant to inform the community, if that makes sense. Yes, right. Tariq, you've got another question.
Oh, thank you. This is additional information, Chair. And the second thing, I did miss that when you said the license activity doesn't require any 10 lesson. Oh, sorry. If the only activity, but if they are not serving alcohol, do they still require the 10 lesson, the license or not?
Yeah, so it's any of the three activities. So the retail supply of alcohol, late night refreshment, so hot food or drink, 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. or regulated entertainment. So I have even at the end of this presentation, I'm not going to show it, but I have even documented the list of what constitutes regulated entertainment, because that always comes up for temporary event notices. So I've actually kept some notes just in case any of the committee feel like testing my knowledge this evening.
No one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sharma.
Thank you, Chair. Joe, you have touched upon this, but I wanted to know, is there a pattern of frequent events being used to bypass a full premises license? And tied in with that, are premises or applicants submitted multiple TENs recently? In other words, is there a pattern that's emerging and how is it dealt with? Thank you.
Thank you. There aren't any concerning patterns. The reason why I caveat that with concerning is that if someone applies for a 10 and it's granted or it's authorized, it's not objected to, and then when that event is held, it generates noise complaints to my noise service, the licensing team get complaints, or the police get complaints about crime and disorder. If a 10 is applied for at the same venue for similar activities, it is likely then that both environmental health and the police will object. And so, any problematic pattern does not last very long. And also, I would finally say as well, if, for example, with noise nuisance, even if you have a license, it doesn't exempt you from not causing a noise nuisance later on. So even if the committee have also and said, yeah, we authorize this license for regulated entertainment till midnight, that doesn't exempt the venue from their legal obligation not to cause a statutory nuisance. So yeah, to answer your question, Councillor, we're not seeing any problematic issues, but also I'm confident that if there was any problematic patterns, we have both the officers and the processes ready to deal with them and respond and protect the communities from potential negative impacts.
Thank you.
I remember Councillor Ball had a question on TENs.
Yeah,
Councillor Ball, is it?
I'll come to that if that's all right, Councillor Ahmed, because the last part of this presentation is just about the trends in Ealing over the past financial year. So shall I go into that?
Yes, please go.
Thank you.
Move on to the last
Thank
part.
you. Thank you. So this is the last 5 years of temporary event notices. So the top number is the number of notices we received. The second line is the amount that were authorised, and the bottom line is the percentage. So yeah, you can see there was a significant impact of COVID restrictions. 2020 to 2021 saw a significant reduction in the amount of TENs that was submitted to the council. We've had a steady but slow trend back to pre-COVID volume. We retain around 90% are authorised. The things where notices might not be authorised, they're either counter noticed by the committee. That's actually quite rare. We might receive temporary event notices and actually the notices themselves are invalid. And in some cases, the temporary event notices might be withdrawn. But yeah, around 90% authorisation. The other thing which we sometimes receive TENs for things that don't require licensing. So I mentioned the regulated entertainment. There's a lot of exemptions for things which mean that they don't constitute regulated entertainment, such as entertainment or singing which is associated with faith or worship. That is exempt from the meaning of regulated entertainment. Also, you'll notice over the past few years there's been quite a lot of special provisions made for events, you know, VE Day, the Euro 24 final, the King's coronation, of course, where the government declare an extension nationally in licensing provision. So if you run a venue and you're like, I'd like to open late or early for VE Day, you'll find out a few weeks before actually the national government have said you don't need to do this because we're making an additional provision for licensed premises. So I did a deeper dive into last financial year. So the chart on the left is over the year, the number of temporary event notices submitted per month, and the chart on the right is when the actual date of the event was. So you can see a real spike for events around December. So that must be you know, different faith seasons going on. Same with November, the same with June, premises wanting to open late. In terms of the status of the temporary event notices, the venues that have applied, so this is Councillor Ball's point, was most TENs are submitted in relation to an already licensed premises. So this is where the example of where I mentioned someone may want to open late or do activities they're not already licensed for, then they'll apply for a temporary event notice. 7% were actually TENs that were submitted in relation to a premises that was unlicensed at the time of application, but has subsequently become licensed, and that's become licensed within that financial year. We had to do quite a lot of data analysis to get some of this, which is why it's if it was licensed within the financial year. But yeah, just over 17% of TENs are in relation to an unlicensed premises. So I think Councillor Ball's question was around you know, what that might be, or the number of events that maybe go ahead but are actually not authorised by TENs. I have to say that since joining Ealing in 2019, I remember for the couple of years pre-COVID, UMEs, unlicensed music events, I heard about them quite often as you know, because we would obviously pursue people for unauthorised licensable activities. So they were much more common than they are now. So I would suggest maybe these events don't go on. We certainly get less reports of unlicensed events happening. Yeah, and I have to say I'm not sure why that is. I'd like to make some comment on the, my optimism around human nature, that maybe people are wanting to regularise more, but it could well be that that there are a few venues around that are kind of licensed for holding events. That's their business model. I'll get a premises license and then I'll rent my venue out for running events. That might be one thing. There's probably some commentary around what the post-COVID nightlife is a bit more like, but again, we're going slightly outside of my area of expertise. In terms of the amount of notice we get, so remembering that the law requires we receive at least 10 clear working days for a standard 10 and a minimum of 5 clear working days for a late 10. 2/3 of 10s were submitted with 29 days or less notice ahead of the event. That's obviously quite a challenge for us, particularly considering a significant amount of events were held in December. So the licensing processing team are very busy in that pre-December period. And yeah, a quarter was submitted with 30 to 59 days to go, and 9% 60 days or more. The average duration of event was actually 48 hours, but by far the most common event was an event of 24 hours or less. So it might have only been 3 or 4 hours on one day. But yeah, you can see I was actually quite surprised that 8% of events were for the full maximum 7 days, so 168 hours. So that trend was interesting to me. I was the other thing is one of the the beauties of Ealing is its kind of diversity and variability, and one of the things is we actually have a few events that go on that adopt totally different operating models. So some events will insist that different areas apply for different 10s, others will apply for 1 10 and so on. So there's a lot of case-by-case basis and variability. Yeah, 93% of 10s were authorised. Last year we issued 6 counter notices, so that's where the police or environmental health objected and the applicant didn't withdraw or anything like that, and that matter went before licensing subcommittee. Yeah, and sometimes we get 10s that might be submitted without a fee, and the fee is only £21, or the application might be invalid. Sometimes we find that applicants, particularly with licensed premises, they apply for something which is already authorised by their existing licence. So we say, you don't need this. We don't need to double authorise your activities. So yeah, just in summary, looking at last financial year and generally, yeah, the issues are around the short time frames, the absence of requirements for publicity, and the fact that the licensing authority cannot take into account objections from anyone other than the police and environmental health. That does cause issues, and things come across my desk in respect of communities and their advocates, frustration with that. If there aren't any objections, the 10 is automatically authorised. So the other thing to bear in mind is the licensing authority doesn't always make a positive decision to approve the event. It's just if there are no objectives and no objections, it's automatically authorised. Yeah, most 10s relate to one-day events, and over 90% of 10s are authorised. So the other thing which I probably finally leave the committee with is, as committee members, you may well be approached by local community organisations or other groups looking to run events with licensable activities, and I would just encourage them very much to contact the licensing team, contact the responsible authorities, so the police licensing team and environmental health, to engage early on, and also to submit their application as soon as possible. We do get quite a lot of applications really right on the edge of the deadline, and so we do find ourselves unfortunately disappointing people that there is no way to grant an authorization for licensable activities, and that can cause some frustration as well. So yes, if anyone on the committee gets approached, please do encourage them, to contact officers and engage with us and ask, and we'll be very happy to advise and assist and support people with making their application. So yeah, I'm gonna that's the end of that, Councillor Ahmed. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there are a few questions. I'll start by taking Councillor Dheer. Councillor Dheer, first you, please.
Yeah, Chair. The authorization rate of the TENS application is around 90%, which is very positive. And that shows that applicants have a good understanding of our objectives, and they are law-abiding type of applicants. My question is, Joe, is there any information in terms of post-authorization conduct of the applicants? Because I think that information could give us helpful information in terms of policy implications for the future, so that if we needed to tighten our policy criteria, we could. So is there any information in that area, please?
Yeah, I haven't got the evidence-based data, but I can say from my experience, compliance is generally very good, and we don't receive many complaints. Like the frequency of complaints about people either breaching their 10 conditions or going beyond the hours that were authorized, or indeed just the event itself causing negative impacts, it is relatively few and far between. So this is why I think, apologies, I can't remember which councillor it was who sort of said to, ask the question, is this a way of people bypassing the framework provided by premises licenses? Our experience is actually it's the other way, that license premises and venues that are looking to get a license, they use the 10 to develop evidence for the committee and so on, to say, look, we've run a number of events, or we've been doing licensable activities for this period here and this period there without any issues, and the officers can satisfy themselves that the applicant is operating in good faith. So yeah, I can think of maybe one premises last year where in fact the process of 10 applications before going for a premises license actually demonstrated that they were probably that they needed more work to be able to run their operation without negatively impacting the licensing objectives.
Thank you. Councillor Anand, unmute yourself, please. Councillor Praveen Anand, unmute yourself, please. Okay, I'll move on to Councillor Shaw, and when okay, Councillor Anand, go on, please.
Sorry, sorry, I had a bit of issues with the system. Just want to ask you, Joe. Say, for example, what is this legal situation? Well, sorry, I know you're not legal, so let me not say it's legal. Let me just say, what is the licensing issue here? If a TENS is refused and the premises actually go round by actually having headphones. I've known of this. They have, everyone is given headphones, and they sell tickets and allow people to bring their own booze. So is there a licensing activity there, or have they bypassed the TENS?
So like a silent disco with bring your own alcohol.
Yeah.
Silent disco. I'm not sure, councillor. I'd have to hit the books.
Licensing experience here. I know certain things that happen, so that's why I brought that.
Yeah, well, I mean, the other thing you could argue is, well, there's no retail sale of alcohol, and Mind, we might get into a discussion about, but yeah, I don't know, but we might get into a discussion about whether the music coming through the headphones is regulating entertainment, because with the last silent disc, I mean, not, I'm a bit old for that now, but the last silent disco I went to, you know, it was DJs that were playing, and that's what people were listening to. So the provision of entertainment via that route, that's still a DJ playing. But yeah, I've not come across that, but I'll have to take that offline if you'd like the true technical answer to that question.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I was just wondering, in terms of the TENS applications, the ones for multiple days, I'm sort of assuming, I know that they're a low proportion, but I'm sort of assuming they're probably linked to the summer and the like events in parks and so on. So is that correct, basically?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a kind of like food festival type thing where you might have alcohol stalls, or you know, like summer of fun type events, maybe where the entertainment moves around, or something like that. So and also pop-ups, you know, like Christmas markets obviously aren't in summer, but you know, small things like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other hand who wants to ask question. So, Joe, I think we've come toward the end of the this report.
Yeah.
Well, I personally want to thank you for the work you've done. I know you have been stretched due to some shortages. So thank you for the work you have done and you are doing. I also want to take the opportunity to thank those councillors who've been coming forward to sit on the subcommittees. It has been working very well, and they have made really good decisions. We can see that reflected in the report. So special thanks to those councillors. They know who they are, who always come forward. So the next item on the agenda is the date of the next meeting, and that is the 8th of October 2025. And thank you for attending the meeting, and we have come to the end of the meeting.